Hello footy fans, welcome to another episode of the Ultimate AFL show for season 2016. Now this episode is another beauty because I'm going to be looking back at round 22, the second last round of the home and away season, before looking towards the last round, round 23, the final round of the 2016 home and away season. We're just about 2 weeks away from the finals. Things are really starting to heat up, and there is a few teams that have a lot to play for in this last round. It's not all over yet. The ladder isn't completely set. Well, the top 8 is, but the positions in the top 8 aren't quite set yet. So we won't know until the end of round 23 to who is playing who in week 1 of the finals. So we'll get to that round very shortly, but first let's look back at round 22. Round 22 started on Friday night at Domain Stadium in Perth between the West Coast Eagles and the premiers of the last 3 years, Hawthorn. This had a bit of interest about it, this game. In fact, it had a lot of interest because, well, West Coast, they only just scraped through with a win against the GWS Giants the week before. And Hawthorn, well, they did get a loss against Melbourne 2 weeks ago. They got a good win against North Melbourne. They did drop off in the second quarter, but they did have a lot to prove in this game, to be honest, because they do go to Domain Stadium and lose most of the time, but except a preliminary final last year against Fremantle. But yeah, Hawthorn, they didn't get off to a good start in the first quarter. In fact, West Coast were 5-3 to 2-1 at quarter time, and it really just went from there. It didn't really seem like a game that Hawthorn was in the hunt to win during the game because West Coast led at half-time 9-4 to 4-2 pretty comfortably, to be quite honest with you. And at three-quarter time, they still had a very good lead of 12-13 to 7-2. And then in the end, the Eagles won pretty convincingly, which was interesting. The final score, 13-14-92, the Eagles defeated Hawthorn 10-7. 67. The goal kickers for West Coast, Kennedy kicked 5, Darling kicked 3, Lacrasse kicked 2, Jetta, Yeo and Shuey all had singles. The Hawks goal kickers, Gunston, Sicily, Burgoyne kicked 2 each, while Bruce, Palopolo, Lewis and Whitecross kicked singles each in this game. So very, very interesting, this game. In fact, West Coast, they've gotten a very good win. There's a real bad thing coming out of this game though for them, and that's the Nick Natanui injury. He did his ACL and or his left knee, and it seems like he's not going to return until 2018, which is shocking news because the week before he kicked one of the sealers of the year, didn't he? And then this week against Hawthorn was injured and is going to miss the rest of this season and pretty much the whole of next season, which is quite shocking because Nick Natanui, he's one of the best ruckmen in the comp, and you know, it's sad that he's going to be out of the game for the next year. But from a West Coast point of view, this is a good win. Of course, next week is a challenge for them to be able to sting away another away win, which is something we know they've had trouble with doing the past couple of years. Hawthorn, I feel like, obviously you can't write them off. That's just common sense. You can't write them off because they've won the last 3 premierships. Last year they lost week 1 of the finals and then came back to win the grand final. So you can't write them off. But I feel like they are heading into the finals with a bit of a rusty patch, if you know what I mean. Like, they lost to Melbourne, won against North Melbourne, but probably they did win convincingly in the end, but there were patches that they probably were a bit rusty in. And then, yeah, this one here, not very good. And next week's game, it seems to be a potential danger game for them because they could lose that game even though they'll go in favourites. So Hawthorn, they are entering the finals, in my opinion, on a bit of a rusty patch, while the Eagles, they've got 2 wins in a row against GWS And Hawthorn, of course, that's two wins in a row against two of the top 8 teams. So they're on a good run at the moment, the Eagles, especially heading into the finals. But big game for them next week. Saturday there were 5 games, and the first one was at Bluntstone Arena in Hobart between North Melbourne and the Sydney Swans. A lot to play for in this game. Of course, the Sydney Swans were playing to basically get to the top of the table after that Hawthorn loss. So they had a lot to play for. And North Melbourne, well, they were playing to basically lock up a top 8 spot because at this point in time, finals weren't guaranteed for them. But anyway, I was at this game, by the way, and I thought the Swans got off to a very good start. In fact, they dominated North Melbourne early in the first quarter and pretty much for the whole quarter, and led by 2 goals, 5-4 to 3-4. And the second quarter, I thought it evened up a little bit. North Melbourne seemed to get back in it. In fact, it was a bit of a low-scoring quarter, to be quite honest with you, because only 2 goals were kicked between the two sides. But the Swans still had a 2-goal lead, 4-8 to 6-8. And the third quarter was interesting. It still kind of remained even. And yeah, it was 9-13 North Melbourne to the Swans still leading 11-9. So North Melbourne were in the game at 3/4 time, but and we know the Swans in the last in this year, in fact, in various points have actually dropped off in the last, say 5 minutes, and that's what's cost them a game. So we know that from the Western Bulldog Richmond game, and Hawthorn is also another example of that as well. But they were able to hang on. In the end, they won by 9 points in what was a close victory for them, but a good victory because it puts them on top of the table going into the last round. The final score, North Melbourne 10-16-76, defeated by the Sydney Swans 12-13-85. The goal kickers for North Melbourne: Harvey kicked 3, Dos Santo, Brown kicked 2 each. Petrie, Goldstein, McKenzie kicked singles, while for the Swans, Rowan, McVeigh, Handelbury kicked 2 each. Hewitt, Papali, Lloyd, Heaney, Kennedy and McGlynn. Now, of course, there's some big news breaking this week that North Melbourne have sacked a bunch of their veteran players, and I'll talk a bit more about that, in my opinion, a little bit later in the show. The other Saturday afternoon game was at the MCG, the home of footy, of course, between Richmond and St Kilda. You might remember last week I was a bit confused and a bit unsure about who I was going to tip in this game. I ended up tipping St Kilda, as you would have seen in last week's episode, and they got off to a good start. They led at quarter time 3-5 to 2-1. They led at half time 5-8 to 2-5, and it was an interesting third quarter because only 1 goal was kicked, which was Richmond. They were the only ones to kick a goal in the third quarter, which was a bit sloppy. St Kilda kicked about 2 behinds, and that was it. But it was quite close going into the fourth quarter, and it was a 9-point win to St Kilda. The final score, Richmond 6-10-46, defeated by St Kilda a 7-13-55. St Kilda, they haven't defeated Richmond for quite some time, but now they have finally done it after so long. The goal kickers for Richmond, Rioli kicked 2, Elton, Rewalt, Moore and Lambert kicked singles each, while for St Kilda, McCartan, Membry kicked 2, Grisham, Rewalt and Billings kicked singles each, in front of over 35,000 people at the MCG. So these two teams trying to finish off the year strongly after, Richmond have had a poor season. St Kilda, I wouldn't say they've had a poor season, but Richmond definitely have, and they lost this game unfortunately, and got a very tough task next week to try and get a win to, I guess, get some positivity out of the season. The twilight game on Saturday was at Spotless Stadium between the Giants and Fremantle. This game really did go the way I expected it to. GWS, they just thumped Fremantle and got a very convincing win. The final score 19-15, 129 GWS defeating Fremantle 5-7-37. The goal kickers for the Giants, Patton, he kicked a massive 6, so it's good to see him getting some form going in to the finals. Cameron, Johnson got 3 each, Green got 2, and then Hopper, Whitfield, Griffin, Lobb and Scully got singles each for the Giants. And then the goal kickers for Fremantle in Matthew Pavlich's second last game of his career. Yaron kicked 3, Neil Apenis kicked singles for the Dockers. So a good bounce back win for the Giants after that late loss to West Coast last week. So they've bounced back strongly, and they've got a big game to try and get and wrap up that home final in their first ever final series as a club. 2 Saturday night games. One of them was at Etihad Stadium between the Pies and the Suns. The Pies, they just dominated this game from start to finish. Kept Gold Coast to only 2 behinds in the first quarter, and yeah, they just did similar throughout the entire game. And in the end, Collingwood won pretty convincingly. The final score 16-22, 118, defeating the Suns 6-11-47. The Suns stayed the week in Melbourne. After that loss to Essendon, they decided to stay the week and absorb the sportiness of Melbourne, but it didn't quite work in their favour because they got smashed by the Pies. The goal kickers for Collingwood, White and De Goey kicked 3 each. Crispin Greenwood kicked 2, while Treloar, Smith, Crocker, Sidebottom, Phillips and Pendlebury kicked singles. While for the Suns, Davis kicked 2, Lynch also kicked 2, Martin and Wright kicked singles. By the way, a big congratulations to Dane Swan. Of course, he retired earlier in the week. He's had a fantastic career, of course, which has involved a Brownlow medal, a grand final, lots of other awards as well. He's going to be one player to remember, that's for sure. So it's sad to see him leave because you know, he never got to play a farewell game, but he's had a great career, and it'll be one to look back on and say, wow, absolutely outstanding. The other Saturday night game was a beauty at Adelaide Oval between Port Adelaide and the Adelaide Crows, of course, showdown. And it was Port Adelaide by a point at quarter time, 4-3 to 4-2. It was very close at half time. The Crows had the lead, only just 6-4 to 7-11. It was still close at three-quarter time. Port Adelaide 12-7 to the Crows 11-14. It went right down to the wire, but in the end the Crows were able to just get away in the final moments of the game and record a good win, but a well-earned and well-fought win. They had to fight for this because Port Adelaide showed a lot of grunt, a lot of fight, and you could see that they really wanted to win this, but the Crows, to their credit, keep their form going as they head into the finals. The final score, Port Adelaide 14-10-94, defeated by the Crows 15-19, 109. The goal kickers for Port Adelaide, Young kicked 3, Gray, Need kicked 2 each. Palmer, Westhoff, Pollock, Tubis, Boak, Armand and Broadbent kicked singles each, while for Adelaide, Betts kicked 5. Stunning game from him, like always. McGovern kicked 3, Lynch, Jenkins, Walker kicked 2 each, and then Brown kicked a single in showdown. Sunday afternoon, there were 3 games. The first one was a very important game, especially for Melbourne, of course. Going into this game, they had the chance to play finals if North Melbourne lost their last 2 games. They just had to win this game and then hope that they could win down at the Cattery next week. But that dream was sort of shattered early in the game, especially in the first quarter, because Carlton got off to a great start, 4-5 to 2-2. And to be honest, it just went from there. Melbourne were playing catch-up footy for the entire game, and it didn't seem like at any point that they were going to come back. Like, you know how it's that, close kind of game where the team's got a good lead, and you might expect the team who was the favourites to come back. They never did that. It was quite disappointing for Melbourne, especially when they had the chance to play finals, and they blew it in this game. Even if they went down to the Cattery and lost, next week, you could say that they gave it their all. But I didn't think they gave it their all in this game. It was quite disappointing from a Melbourne perspective. The final score, Carlton 11-12, 78, defeated Melbourne 7-16, 58. So a 20-point win in the end for the Blues, who have had a good season under their new coach, Brendan Bolton. The goal kickers for Colton, Buckley kicked 3, Graham kicked 2, Wright, Everett, Cripps, Sumner, Jones and Phillips kicked singles each for the Blues. Melbourne goal kickers, Vandenberg, Hunt, Hogan, Oliver, Bugg, Neil, Bullen and Gawn. So there you have it, that's the goal kickers for Melbourne. This game was played in front of just over 40,000, so this was supposed to be a very big game for Melbourne, and it was, but they didn't turn up on the day, and as a result they won't be playing finals in season 2016. Geelong travelled to the Gabba to take on the Lions in a Sunday mid-afternoon game, and they got off to a great start, the Cats, 7-3 to 1-3, but to the Lions' credit, they were able to just slightly cut back the lead a little bit. In fact, they got 6 goals in the second quarter to Geelong's 2 goals. So they outscored Geelong in the second quarter. I thought they did well to get back into it at half-time. 7-4 to 9-7 with the Cats still leading. But then the Cats in the second half put the foot on the accelerator and went off to the races. The final score, Lions 10-9-69, defeated by the Cats 19-15, 129. The goal kickers for the Lions, Rich Bell kicked 2 each, Walker, Taylor, Cutler, Robertson, Matheson and Rockcliffe kicked singles for the Lions, while for the Cats, Motlop kicked 5, Dangerfield, Henderson, Hawkins, McCarthy kicked 2 each, while Blixarves, Duncan, Enright, Cowan, Kirsten and Guthrie kicked singles for the Cats at the Gabba. And then the last game to finish off the second last round of the home and away season was Essendon and the Western Bulldogs. The Dogs got off to a great start in the first quarter. They kicked 6 in a row after the Dons scored the first goal of the game and led 6-2 to 1-2. Dropped off a little bit in the second quarter, I thought, the Dogs. Essendon kind of was able to sort of be in at half-time, but at the same time the Dogs did have an interesting lead, but it wasn't a big lead, 9-5 to 5-7, but then the Dogs were able to steer away in the second half. They won in the end, not convincingly I didn't think, although they did get a good win. I didn't think they won that convincingly because Essendon did test them at various points, but the Dogs, to their credit, were able to get a good win and win 14-9-93, defeating Essendon 7-11-53. The goal kickers for Essendon, Danaher kicked 2, Leuenberger, Merritt, Cooney, Ventasia and Merritt kicked singles each, while for the Dogs, Dixon kicked 3, Daniel kicked 2, John Boyd, Wood, Picken, Cordy, McLean, Roughhead, Hunter and Smith kicked singles each in this game. By the way, Caleb Daniel, and I mentioned this on my Western Bulldogs Only show a couple of days ago, Caleb Daniel, I believe, is one of the most consistent young players in the competition at the moment. And I think he's well deserved of the Rising Star Award this season. I don't think any player should beat him at that. I think he's the best Rising Star this year, and he's the most consistent player. I feel like he's one of those players who just performs week in, week out, whether it's just putting the 1%ers in or just being that real influential player each and every week, and that's exactly what he is. So I'm going to be stunned if he doesn't win the Rising Star, because I think he's in very good form. He deserves it. I think he deserves it more than any player. There's obviously some great young players who have been nominated, of course. There's, Rioli, who got nominated this week, and then there's some other ones. Sicily's been okay this year. Wittering, we know. Petrarca, Daisy Pearce has been good. Daisy Parish for Essendon has been good this year as well. But I just feel like Daniel is just a step above all those players. I feel like he should be the Rising Star winner of 2016. I'm not saying that just because I'm a Western Bulldogs supporter. I'm saying that because I've seen him for most of the games this season. I've seen him live, and he's just an absolute fair dinkum rising star. It's simple as that. So hopefully he wins it, because I think he deserves it. But there's a couple of other players that do deserve it as well, but I just think he deserves it more than any other player. So that is round 22. Let's get into the stats. We start with the leading goal kickers, and Josh Kennedy, well, he's got away to a 5-goal lead on 75, with Eddie Betts being the next best on 70. Lance Franklin didn't kick a goal on Saturday at Bloodstone Arena. Went off a couple of times with a hip injury, but yeah, I thought he was a bit disappointing on Saturday. I was, to be honest, the biggest thing I was looking forward to at Bloodstone Arena on Saturday was to watch Lance Franklin in action for the first time in a very long time. I haven't seen him for a while in a home and away game. I saw him in a pre-season game earlier in the year, but yeah, haven't really seen him in action in a home and away game for quite some time. So I was a bit disappointed with what I got. But anyway, you would probably think that he can't win the Coleman medal now. It's disappointing to say, isn't it? Because, well, he was looking like the likely winner early in the year. But anyway, Tom Lynch is on 4th on 65, and then Josh Jenkins is 5th on 59. You then have the leading disposals, Lockie Neal, 701 in 1st. He's been leading for some time now. Dan Hanbury in 2nd on 657. On 656 is Dangerfield. On 651 is Martin on 4th. And then Treloar is on 637 in 5th. You then have the leading marks. Rewalt leads the marks on 201. Heath Shaw's there in 2nd on 167. Doherty not far behind him on 165 in 3rd. Hogan in 4th on 146. And Tom Lynch is level with him on the same, 146. And then the tackles, finally to round out the stats wrap-up for after round 22, Matt Prittis leads with 169 tackles. Rory Sloane is in 2nd on 151, level with Swallow. And then you have Ed Curnow on 147 in 4th, with Jack Viney in 5th on 142. So there we go. That is the stats wrap up for after round 22. I'll wrap up the stats for the last time next week. So we'll see who wins the Coleman medal next week. Wouldn't count Betts out of it just yet. Of course, Kennedy and Betts verse each other on Friday night. So that could be a showdown for the Coleman medal in many ways, as well as for obviously a home final, etc. Then finally the ladder, and you can see there the Swans have taken top spot, and the Crows are in 2nd on the same amount of points. In fact, the whole top 4 is on the same amount of points. So winning is crucial this week for that top 4. And then you've got Giants, Eagles, and the Dogs all level on points, of course. And it's interesting. I reckon the Western Bulldogs could possibly get up to either 6th or 5th after round 23, so they could be hosting a home final, whether that's at the MCG or Etihad, probably likely at the MCG. So it's very crucial this last round. Everyone's got everything to play for, and you know, when I look at this ladder, I think back to last year where North Melbourne rested players, etc. And then I think to the week off. Obviously, next week after round 23, we have a week off before the finals, which no one really likes, to be honest. Even the players don't like it. I don't necessarily think it's necessary. I don't think teams would have been resting players for this week, especially in that top 8. In that whole top 8, I don't think maybe North Melbourne would have, to be honest. But yeah, no one would be resting players this week or anything. That wouldn't be going on. So. But the AFL wouldn't have known that. So very, very crucial this last round, especially for everyone in that top 8. You wouldn't think anyone can make it outside the top 8 now. Melbourne are definitely out of it. St Kilda, they have to win by a fair bit to make it, and they've got the Lions, but I doubt that's going to happen. So that's the ladder. We'll wrap that up next week, and of course, along with it will be the finals fixtures. So. Let's get into round 23 now. So round 23 starts on Friday night between the Adelaide Crows and the West Coast Eagles. It is a very important game for both these sides. Of course, the Crows are trying to keep that 2nd spot and host a home qualifying final in the first week of the finals, while the West Coast Eagles, they are playing for a home elimination final. And if you think they got a home elimination final at Domain Stadium, then I tell you what, that gives them all the more chance of getting deeper into the final series. So this is going to be a big game. This game's starting at 8:10 p.m. It's at the Adelaide Oval on Friday night, Friday the 26th of August. I think the Crows are going to win. They're very good at home. They did defeat the Eagles at Domain Stadium earlier in the year. So, yeah, I think the Crows, they have been in very good form heading into these finals, and I actually believe that they could be there on the last day, or the first Saturday of October now, isn't it? But I think they could be in the grand final. I think they're peaking, and they've peaked at the right time, and obviously that keeping that second spot, or even that first spot, it doesn't really matter, does it? But, getting that home final will be the start of maybe greatness for them. 5 games on Saturday. It starts at Simmons Stadium, the Cattery, at 1:45 p.m. between Geelong and Melbourne. Crucial game for both teams. Of course, Geelong aiming to consolidate their spot in the top 4, while Melbourne, well, it's not really a crucial game for Melbourne anymore, is it? Their finals hopes are done and dusted. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Geelong will win this. I would have probably tipped Melbourne if they were to win last week, but they were quite disappointing. So, Geelong for me at the Cattery. The other Saturday afternoon game is at the MCG between Essendon and Carlton. These two teams are rivals, aren't they? So, this will be an interesting game. And I think Carlton, they were very good last week against Melbourne. I think they're going to finish off the season with a win. So then we get into the twilight game at the SCG between the Swans and Richmond. We remember that Rioli kick on the siren that won Richmond the game earlier in the year. That was at the MCG. It broke the Swans' heart. And of course a 90-second lapse for them. It cost them the game, didn't it? So, but they are sitting on top at the moment, which is good from their point of view. So it probably didn't cost them really anything. But to be honest, I think the Swans are going to win this game pretty comfortably. I can't see Richmond winning this. I think they are going to, they're going to find it hard to beat the Swans, especially at the SCG. So the Swans, they are also in great form heading in to the finals, although I didn't think they were that good last week at Blundstone Arena, but they are a very great side, as we know. So the twilight game, I'm tipping the Swans, and then the 2 Saturday night games. The first one is the Suns and Port, 7:25 at Metricon Stadium. Could be a good game, this one, but I think I'm going to tip Port Adelaide. And then this is a crucial game for probably the GWS Giants, because they are trying to basically earn themselves a home final in Sydney. So this is North Melbourne and the GWS Giants, 7:25 at Etihad Stadium. If the Giants win this, they will get themselves a home final. It's simple as that. North Melbourne, well, I guess they are just playing to consolidate their top 8 spot even more. But yeah, just by the way, on North Melbourne, and I said I was gonna mention this, by the way, They did say they were going to not offer contracts to just D'Alsanto, Harvey, Ferrito and Petrie today. Half of the decision I agree with, and half I don't. I'm a bit stunned about Brent Harvey. I think, his age suggests he probably shouldn't be playing, but his form doesn't, and that's the simple fact. I'm a bit surprised that D'Alsanto is going too. I think he kicked 2 goals on Saturday, didn't he? But yeah, he is in his 30s. I still think he has a little bit to give, but that might have to come at another club. I think Petrie and Ferrito, though, their time is probably up. I think Petrie, he hasn't really provided much this season, and Ferrito, well, probably the same. So half I'm agreeing with and half I'm not. I'm kind of stunned with that news coming out today. But anyway, it's a crucial game for both sides leading in to the finals. Sunday there are 3 games. One of them is at Etihad Stadium between the Saints and the Lions. This game starting at 1:10 p.m. I expect St Kilda to finish off what has been a positive season for them with a win. The mid-afternoon game, Sunday afternoon game that is, Hawks and Collingwood battle it out for the first time this season at the MCG, starting at 3:20 p.m. That's amazing, isn't it? This is the first time they've met this season. How incredible. They've actually become sort of rivals in the last couple of years, especially after that 2010 preliminary final. But anyway, if the AFL want to do that, that is fine. But anyway, yeah, interesting game. Like I mentioned before, Hawks are entering a bit of a rusty patch as they go into the finals. So crucial game for them. I'm going to tip them just. I think this might be a good game, though. I think Collingwood will take it up to them, and it will be a close game, but I think the Hawks will win. And then the final game, it's Matthew Pavlich's last game of season, of his career, sorry. It is Fremantle and the Western Bulldogs, 4:40 p.m. at Domain Stadium. I think the Dogs are going to win this game. I hope they win from a heart point of view. They need to win this game because they're currently sitting in 7th, and if they win, they will get themselves a home final. So that's on the basis if the Eagles and GWS Giants lose, of course. So if those two or one of them lose, they will earn themselves a home elimination final. I'm not saying that will be at Etihad. It probably will most likely be at the MCG, but it will be in Melbourne, which is what I mean. So that game at 4:40 p.m. at Domain Stadium, crucial game for the Dogs. And Fremantle, well, they are hoping to get a win for their veteran in Matthew Pavlich in his last game. Okay, and that is it for this episode of the Ultimate AFL Show. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. Don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe. I come out with a new episode of this every week. And of course, the finals are now here, so this show is really heating up now. Now, of course, there's no football next week. There's a week off, of course, before the finals, but I'll still be back next week with another episode of the Ultimate AFL Show. It's going to be a big episode next week. I'm going to be reviewing round 23, wrapping up the final stats, as well as looking towards the All-Australian Awards, the EJ Whitten game, and also that women's exhibition game, as well as the NAB Rising Star. So a big episode next week filled with those things that are happening in the week off. So until next week, I'm Jacob. Hope your team wins. Bye for now.